Hi guys, I'm Luke, an expert Duolingo English Test teacher, and today we're going to talk about one of the speaking tasks on this test. The task we're going to look at is describing a picture orally, so through speaking. And this is probably one of the hardest tasks on the whole test. It's difficult because you have to describe something in a lot of detail, and you've got to do this spontaneously without much planning. So it really tests your fluency, your pronunciation, and your organizational skills. It's pretty hard, but in this lesson we're going to go over a simple method you can use to make this task easier for you. But guys, if you're new to my channel, hi, I'm Teacher Luke, and I make English lessons like this to help students like you improve your English. So if this is something you're interested in, hit that like button and subscribe as well. So what happens in this task? Well, firstly, you're given one image, an image like this, 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 or this, and you have to describe one of these images in a lot of detail. So being able to describe an image is not as easy as it seems. A lot of students that do this, they start off quite well, but then they get stuck because they either run out of things to say or they don't know how to organize their answer. That's why learning a method like the one I'm going to show you today is extremely helpful. But before I show you my method, let's look at how this task is actually scored. So to get a high score on this task, you have to think about three things: content, fluency, and pronunciation. So let's take a look at content first. Content refers to how well you describe the image. So the first point is about labeling versus describing. Do you actually describe the image or do you just label it? If you just label an image, you'll get a very low score. Let me show you what labeling means. So let's say this is our image. Some people will just answer this task like this. This picture has two people in it. There is a building. There is a bench. There is a park. There are leaves on the grass. There is a path, and so on. This will not get you a high score on this task. You have to be able to describe the picture, not just label it, and you have to use descriptive language when describing. We'll talk more about that later. Next, on the content section, we have vocabulary range and precision and grammatical range and accuracy. So for vocabulary range, do you use topic-related vocabulary, adverbs of place, and also descriptive adjectives? And do you use the correct grammar to describe the image? Of course, this is a test of your English ability, so it's not surprising that vocabulary and grammar are scored quite highly on this task. Okay, moving on. Next we have fluency. This refers to how smoothly you describe the image. So for this, you should think about your speaking speed, smoothness, and phrasing. You also want to avoid hesitations and repetitions. I've seen a lot of students who answer this task, they get a little bit stuck when they're speaking, so they say a lot, or they simply just pause during a sentence. This is what we mean by hesitation. And repetition is starting a sentence, but then not finishing it and then starting again. Students usually do this when they think they've made a mistake. But it's really important that you avoid these two things, as they do affect your fluency score. And the third criteria is pronunciation. This refers to how clearly you describe the image. To get a high score, you're looking for native-like pronunciation, which means that you can be easily understood by a native English speaker. So things like pronunciation of phonemes, connected speech, and also your intonation. You should definitely focus on these three things in order to improve your pronunciation score. Okay then, let's get to my method of answering this task. This method will help you to organize your answers step by step. So on test day, when you're taking the test, you don't have to think, oh my god, how am I going to even answer this question? By using this method, you'll know exactly how to answer. So on test day, all you have to do is think about the actual image and describe that image correctly. So what's the method? Well, here it is. Okay, we start off with planning. You have to analyze the picture. You should be thinking of questions like, what is in the picture? What is happening? Etc. But remember, don't speak here. Then we have general summary, which can be done in 1 or 2 sentences. Then number 2, describe the location. This is the most important part. Part 3, we have add detail. And 4, speculate. Only do speculate if you have enough time. Okay, so let's get started by talking about the planning stage. So how do you plan? Well, let's take a look. So let's say this is our image that we have to describe on test day. First, I recommend that you analyze the picture in your head without speaking. You should ask yourself these questions. What do I see in the image? And what is the most important thing in the image? Usually, if there are people in the image, then people will be the most important. So in this image, I see a man and a woman. I see a bench. I see a building in the background, maybe a church. I see a park, some trees, a path, and another building on the left, which looks like it's under construction. The most important thing is, of course, the man and the woman, and you should notice that they look upset, angry, or irritated at something. So that's the most important thing in this image. So remember to do all your planning without speaking. You have to just think in your head. Of course, on the Duolingo English test, you're not allowed to have a pen and paper, so just do this by thinking. Then you can start speaking. You want to start your description with a general summary, usually 1 or 2 sentences. You should ask yourself, what's the most important thing? In your planning stage, you've already answered the question, what's the most important thing? So you should describe and talk about that important thing. You can begin your sentences like this. This picture shows. This image shows. Or in this picture there is. Or in this image there are. You should also include a little bit of detail in your summary. And the grammar you should use is either the present simple or the present continuous. So let's again take a look at this image. Can you think of one sentence you can use for a general summary? Well, I have a couple answers for you. So my first answer is simply, this image shows a man and a woman. Do you think this is a good answer? Well, not really. I would say this is a poor answer. Even though the sentence is grammatically correct and it does give a general summary, this sentence just doesn't include enough information or enough detail. Remember that this is an English language test, so your job is to show off all your English. If you just use simple sentences like this, then the Duolingo English Test computer can't give you a good score because it doesn't know how good your English is, just because you're using simple sentences. So you want to include more detail in your sentences. Next example, this image shows a man and a woman sitting on a bench. Is this good? Well, this is not bad. This, of course, includes more detail, sitting on a bench, and this is considered a complex sentence. We actually call this a reduced relative clause. In its full form, you can say, this image shows a man and a woman who are sitting on a bench. So this sentence gives more detail and it's not bad, but I still think you can do better. Okay, so the next sentence has a little bit more information. This image shows a man and a woman sitting on a bench in a park. This again is a little bit better because it includes more information. It includes the location where the man and woman are. They are in a park. However, I still think you can do better than this. So take a look at my last example. This image shows a man and a woman sitting next to each other on a bench in a park, and they look upset about something. So I think this would be considered a very good answer because it includes a lot of information and actually it talks about the emotions of the people. In this picture, of course, the man and the woman look very upset, so you should mention that. This sentence also includes some prepositions, like next to each other. This type of prepositional phrase is very useful in an activity like this. Okay, so that was the first part of this method. It is to give a general summary of the picture. Remember that you should include some detail in your general summary. Because again, this is an English test, so you have to show off your English. So be prepared to answer in more detail than you probably would in real life. Okay, so part 1 is probably the easiest part of my method. Now let's take a look at the most difficult and the most important, and that is part 2, which is describe the location. So in part 2, we have to think about what is in the image and where it is positioned. Overall, This task of describing an image is a descriptive task, so you have to use descriptive language and describe where things are positioned in the picture. And it's very important how you organize your answer. There are three ways to do this. We can go from left to right, or right to left, top to bottom, or bottom to top, or from far to near, or near to far. In your planning stage, I highly recommend that you pick one of these and stick to it throughout the whole task. Also, you should use different adverbs of place and different adjectives to describe the objects or the things in the picture. Adverbs of place are a little bit tricky. But here's an image to help you. Adverbs of place are usually spoken in these types of phrases. So we have on the top or above, at the top, in the center, in the corner, at the bottom, under, beneath, underneath, and below. We also have things like to the left, to the right. And there are lots of extra phrases you can use too. For example, in the background or in the foreground. In the background and in the foreground are essential phrases if you want to describe the picture from far to near or near to far. The background would be far and the foreground would be near. We also have in the front of, directly opposite, exactly in the middle of, roughly in the middle of, in close proximity to, just above, and parallel to. These are just some of the phrases you can use to describe the location of things in the image. There are lots more, and I promise I will make a whole lesson just on these phrases for you, but give me some time. Okay, so again, let's take a look at this image. How could we describe the location of things in this image? Well, here's a sample answer. So for this, I used the far to near approach. I started off by describing things in the background, and then I moved slowly to the foreground, or the front. And this helped me to describe this image in a very coherent and natural way. So this was my answer. There is a tall white building that looks like a church, which is in the background in the top right-hand corner. There are some people waiting outside. In front of that building, there is a narrow path, which leads to another building on the left. That building is under construction. There is also a small park in front of the white building that has several trees and lots of crisp autumn leaves covering the grass. The two young adults are sitting on a brown bench in the foreground of this image. So as you can see from my example, I described this image from far to near. And I used lots of different adjectives. They are the words in purple. We have tall, white, narrow, small, crisp, autumn, young, brown. And I used lots of adverbials of place, which are in prepositional phrases. So these are the ones in green. In the background, in the top right-hand corner, in front of, on the left, and in the foreground. So using lots of adjectives and adverbials of place will make your answer very descriptive, which is the aim of this task. The task is to describe an image. So again, you have to use descriptive language. And don't forget, this is the most important part of this task, so make sure you take your time and do this part very well. And after you finish part 2, then you can move on to part 3, which is add detail. So here you add detail to the important parts of the image. Don't add detail to everything. So ask yourself, what is the most important part? Of course, in the image we've been describing, the two people are the most important parts. So we want to describe those two people. For vocabulary, you want to use things like action verbs. So you want to describe what the people are doing. And of course, you should use adjectives to describe the nouns in more detail and adverbs to give more detail and more information about the actions or the verbs that are taking place. And for the grammar, again, you can just use the present simple and present continuous. So let's take a look at this image one more time. So I'll show you a few answers and I want you to think if they are good or not. So I could just say, the two people both look sad. So I would consider this a very poor answer because it's too simple and not descriptive enough. Also, the word sad is a very simple word. Remember on how you are scored? One of the aspects you're scored on is vocabulary range, and sad is a very high frequency and common word. So you won't get a very high score for using sad. So what other words can we use instead of sad? Well, have a look at my second answer. The two people both look irritated and they're not talking to each other. So this is better. It's not great, but it is better. Irritated is a better word than sad for this picture. You could also use words like annoyed or frustrated. Also, this answer is better because I added more information and I used the conjunction and. So, and they are not talking to each other. So this is better. But again, I think you could do better than this, so take a look at my third answer. The two people both look irritated and they're not talking to each other. The man is holding his forehead with both hands and staring down at the pavement, while the woman has her head in her right hand and looking in the opposite direction to the man. Of course, this is a much better answer than the previous two. It goes into a lot more detail and is very descriptive about the actions that are taking place. So it definitely adds more detail to the most important elements of the picture, which is the two people. So again, try to remember that this is a test of your English skill. So you have to show that you are able to do things in English. So always remember to answer and elaborate. Answer and elaborate. So let's move on to the fourth part of my method, and it is to speculate. To speculate simply means to guess about what is happening or what has already happened. Before I talk about this in more detail, I want to let you know that if you have run out of time by now and you don't have time to speculate, that's okay. This is probably the least important part of this task. Remember, this task is a descriptive task, so your main job is to describe the image and describe the most important parts of the image. But if you still have some time left, then you can speculate. So let's talk about that. So firstly, don't speculate about everything. Again, just speculate about the most important parts of the picture. So you want to ask two questions. Why is something happening now? The grammar you can use to speculate about now, the present, you could use modal verbs, might, may, could, must, etc. Also, you can use probably or I suppose. The most common one is just maybe. But I recommend you use one of the previous ones first, because maybe is a very high frequency word. And to get a higher score, you want to use lower frequency and more advanced grammar, such as modal verbs, probably or suppose. You could also think about what happened in the past, and how that past has affected the picture now. So for this, you want to use the past modal verbs, like might have or must have. So here are 4 examples. You could say, they could be arguing about something very important because she probably wants to end the relationship because blah blah blah. They must have discussed a sensitive issue because blah blah blah. They might have just broken up with each other because blah blah blah. The ones in green could be arguing and probably are speculating about the present, so about now. The ones in purple must have discussed, might have just broken up, are speculating about the past. But that past is affecting the present right now. Okay, so that's the simple method you can use. It's important to think about a method of answering these types of questions, because on test day, you don't want to be thinking, oh my god, how do I even answer this question? You want to already know how you're going to answer so that you can just look at the question, or in this case an image, and answer that question directly using a method that you've already practiced. That will make your life so much easier. So a quick sum up, we have the planning stage. This is about 5 to 15 seconds of thinking. Remember, you should think about what's in the picture and what is the most important thing about the picture, but don't speak during this stage. Then the first thing you should do is give a general summary. You should do this in 1 or 2 sentences. You can go into some detail, but don't go into too much. The second part is the most important. Here you want to describe the location. Remember to use adverbs of place when doing this. Part 3, you want to add detail to the important part of the picture. And part 4, if you have time, you can make some speculations about what has happened or what is happening in the picture. This is my sample answer. You can pause this and read it, and I'll also copy and paste this into the description below. Okay, now it's your turn. I'm going to show you an image and I'm going to give you 3 minutes, just like in the test, to describe this image. Definitely try this orally by yourself. And if you want some feedback from me, write your answer below in the comments and I'll check it for you. Okay, let's go. Okay, so that's it from me today. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what you think of this method in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.